Could you tell me your name?
Linda Denning Stafford.
All right, and I have a statement to read really quickly. I really appreciate your taking the time to talk with me today. I'm conducting this interview as a part of a family history project that I'm doing for a course at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm doing a history of the last 4 generations of my family, and in class we are reading about the history of the family and family roles. Everyone in the class has been asked to choose a family member to interview about his or her life story. I record/take notes on our interview and share it with them with my professor and the other students in class. Excerpts from our interview will be incorporated in a family history website that is a final project for our class. I would also be happy to share it with you. The purpose of the interview is for me to learn about your life and the history of our family. If any of my questions touch upon things you'd rather not talk about or that make you uncomfortable in any way, please tell me. Do you agree to allow me to conduct this interview and use it in the ways described above?
Yes.
All right, then. So, can you tell me where and when you were born?
I was born March 14th, 1945 in Johnston County. Actually, I was born in Johnston County. I was born at home out in the country.
All right, and did you live on a farm?
Yes, we lived on a farm. My daddy was a farmer most all of his life. And he had 7 children. He and Mama together had 7 children. So when the children got grown and gone, he started doing carpentry work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically the 2 things he did in his life.
Mm-hmm. And did you work on the farm as you were growing up?
Absolutely. If you lived in that household, you worked. No doubt about it. No excuses. You worked.
What kind of farming did you do?
We did tobacco, cotton, corn, potatoes. We did some truck farming, which consisted of cucumbers, okra, and watermelons.
Mm-hmm.
Those things like that.
So truck farming was kind of growing things and then taking them off to sell yourself?
That's right.
Okay. So you worked on the farm, but what about school? When did you start going to school?
I started school at 6 years old. So that would have been 1951. See, back then, there were no kindergarten programs. Mm-hmm. And so you started school at 6 years old. Things were so different during that day and age. You mainly worked to make a living and went to school, came home, and worked some more.
Where did you go to school? Did you go to school in Sampson County or Johnston County?
I went to school in Johnston County. I went to school at Meta High School.
Meta High School, okay.
Yeah, it was a fairly large school for that date and time, but it's not even standing anymore. Mm-hmm. They tore that beautiful old brick school down. In fact, you've been to that school. You
Yep.
remember how pretty it was?
Mm-hmm.
But they tore it down and built a new facility.
Yeah. Did you you would have had 12 years. That's minus, not including kindergarten.
I went 12, grades 1 through 12.
Yeah. Did you, was it split up? Was it just one school or was it an elementary school or middle school?
I went to the same school, the same building for 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah. There was no splitting it up. You just went to that schoolhouse because it housed grades 1 through 12.
Who was your favorite teacher that you had while you were?
Miss Vida Wood. She was such a wonderful teacher. I remember she would let us do paper mache things, and I made a frog, and it was probably 12 inches high, and it had the little arms that stuck out. It was sitting up,
Mm-hmm.
and I painted it green. It won a prize.
Oh, that's
She
cool.
really liked my frog.
I didn't know you were artistic.
Yeah.
Wait, I take that back. I
Oh.
did know that.
Yeah, you should have
Because
known.
you painted that sun that's out on the house.
That's right. And look at all these other things I do in our house.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to be artistic, not autistic, to do that.
Oh, my goodness.
Uh,
Well, did you have a lot of friends that you
Yeah.
went to school with?
I had a lot of friends.
Who was
Yeah.
your best friend?
My best friend was Wilma Jean Holly. She's still living. My first boyfriend was John Massingill. You might not want to put that out for the public to see.
Oh, no.
Because he is, he's now deceased. And he was my first boyfriend.
First boyfriend. How many boyfriends did you have, Nana?
I didn't have a lot. I guess my next boyfriend would have been a guy by the name of Cheryl Register.
Mm-hmm.
See, his family helped us during the farming season to barn tobacco, and mainly barning tobacco, but getting it ready for the market.
Yeah.
So he was a couple of years older than I was, and I don't know, we started dating. But then we dated for several years,
Mm-hmm.
and he went off to college. And when he went off to college, he found him a new girlfriend.
Mm. Was this the same guy that you were engaged to before you met Papa?
I was never engaged before you popped.
I thought you had told me you were engaged to him, or you were planning to marry him, or
Well,
something.
You know, I probably, being a teenager, thought that one day we might get married, but it didn't work out.
Mm. Well, when did you meet Papa?
I met your papa in 1964. I graduated from high school in 1963, and at some point in time after graduation, I was working in Benson, and I broke it off with Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
He had borrowed some money from me, and he came on the pretext of paying me my money back. And so I told him, I said, you need to get out of my house, and I don't ever want to see you again.
Ooh.
But after that was when I met your papa. The following January of 64.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to the Azalea Festival in Wilmington that spring
Mm-hmm.
of 64. On the way back, your papa got down in the foot of the car, because we were riding with somebody else. I don't remember who we were riding with. Do you, John? Must have been maybe Jimmy and Kay or somebody. But he got in the foot of the car and asked me to marry him. And I wasn't ready for that. So, let's see.
So how old would you have been? 19? Or about to be 19? Just turned 19?
Yeah, because I was 20 when we got married, and he was 25.
Mm-hmm.
See, he was this older man.
How did you meet Papa?
Okay. My cousin was in an automobile accident with Jimmy Neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy was kind of a wild guy, and he was leaving his house with Dale, who's my cousin, and her sister. They were best friends. So he was trying to make a curve too fast. He couldn't make that curve, so he turned over several times.
Mm.
It's a wonder they hadn't all gotten killed. But anyway, I went to the hospital to see my cousin, and see, this is something else you probably ought not put in for public view. But I was scared to death of Jimmy Neighbors, because he didn't have he was a wild man. He had a wild reputation.
Yeah.
My mom and daddy would have had a stroke.
If they knew you had gone to see him?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Turn the dance. But anyway, when I left my cousin's room, Jimmy's room was across the hall, like 2 doors down. So I was just going to stick my head in there and say hi. How you doing? Well, there stood your papa in all his glory with his navy blue pants on and a yellow shirt and a nice pair of shoes with his arms crossed his belly like he always stands, you know. There you go. So, he stood there, he never took his eyes off of me. And I thought, what's going on here? So Charles told me that after I left, he asked Jimmy who was that girl. And Jimmy said, her name's Linda something. This is just the way he was. He said, her name's Linda something, but Charles said, well, I want you to get me fixed up with her. So Jimmy said, according to your papa, no, I'm going to date her. You're not going to date her. Well, little did Jimmy know he would never date me. So, there used to be a place in Dunn on 301 South. It was Russell's, wasn't it?
S&S.
It was the S&S Grill. It was run by a man named Russell. And people at that point in time would just come there and they would get a hamburger after, it was time to go home.
So your version of a cookout.
Yeah.
Where we all go hanging out, y'all would hang out at the S&S.
S&S, which that building's long been gone.
Good hamburgers.
They were the best hamburgers. But anyway, I was sitting there with this girl who had ridden uptown with me that night. And up comes Jimmy Neighbors to my side of the car, and he yanks my door open, and he said, hey, that guy over there wants to date you. And I said, what guy? He said, Charles Stafford. You know, the guy that was in my hospital room that night. I said, I don't know him. And he said, well, he's a fine fella. Little did he know. But anyway, somehow it got arranged so that Charles and I would date, but we would double date with Jimmy and Kay. Jimmy and Kay eventually got married, and so did we.
Mm-hmm.
Thus comes you.
Me?
Down the road.
Oh, way down the road.
Way
but
down the
how did your getting married end up? What was that story?
Well, let me finish telling. Charles drove. This was in 1964. And Charles drove a drop-dead, gorgeous, bright red 409 Chevrolet with 4 in the floor. He could really drive a car back then. And I stressed back then. But anyway, he picked me up, and Jimmy and Kay were in the back. So we dated for a right good while. In fact, I'm sure when we went to the Azalea Festival It was Jimmy and Kay that we were with. Well, we dated, and in October of '64, I accepted his ring. Well, when he went to pick me up that afternoon to let's go uptown, he couldn't wait, I guess, so we stopped down at Stony Run Church, pulled up in the churchyard, and he was going to give me the ring. I think he must have been really nervous because he dropped it. And he dropped it, and it took him a while to find it. He opened the car door, he got out, he looked at that ring, but finally he got the ring on my finger. So I wanted to have a church wedding. He, being bashful, did not want to have a church wedding. But I thought I was going to maybe win that battle because I already had the dress. I had spoken for the church. I had asked somebody to sing. I had spoken, to the preacher. And long about, I don't know, that was in October we got engaged. A little while after that, maybe it was early the next year, Jimmy and Kay were engaged, and they were going to go to South Carolina and get married. Now, you remember I was telling you what a wild man Jimmy was?
Uh-huh.
Well, Jimmy, he lost his license for driving drugs.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So Charles was hauling him around, and they would double date with us all the time because he didn't have a license. And he came from a really poor family, so they couldn't get him out of it, and they just didn't have the means and the wherewithal to do all these things that people do nowadays.
He lost his license for career.
Charles has just let me know that I was wrong. It won't driving drunk. However, I'm sure he could have at some point gotten a ticket for driving drunk. But he lost his license for racing. So you see why I say I wouldn't date him?
I don't blame you.
He was a great guy, and he still is. But he had a wild streak. So, sometime between the first of the year and March, Jimmy and Kay informed us that they were going to get married and they were going to go to South Carolina. Why didn't we go with them? And I'm thinking, you shut your mouth, because I'm supposed to have a church wedding. But anyway, Charles talked me into it, and he said, I just don't think I can stand up there in front of all those people. Well, my gosh, look what he was getting. Wasn't that a little sacrifice?
I think it was.
I do too. But anyway,
That face he's making over there.
April the 17th, 65, we went with Jimmy and Kay and had a double wedding in Dillon, South Carolina. Now, I ran a florist for many years.
Yeah.
I did a lot of weddings. Now, so many of those weddings, and I don't mean to sound like I'm being ugly, but they didn't last.
Uh-oh.
But Charles and I have been married 54 years in April, and Jimmy and Kay have been married 54 years in April.
So you're a big proponent of elopements.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Vegas?
Yeah, that would be fine. That would have been good. But if anybody ever tells you and turns up their nose and says, I wouldn't go to Dillon, South Carolina to get married, A lot of people have been married in Dillon, South Carolina. I'm telling. We were 4 of them. But we had a double wedding. And so,
The woman that married us, her name was Sarah Moffett.
listen to this. We did not know, because we were young and dumb, that Kay was pregnant.
Oh,
Which during that point in time in history,
that was a no.
that was terrible. So they had to get married quick. And I couldn't figure out what's the problem here. Why are you being so quick on the draw about this? But that was why they got married. And the girl, the daughter that they had is Lisa.
Yeah.
And Lisa cleans your teeth.
Yep. Oh my goodness.
So it is a small, small world when you really get down to it.
Well, what did your mama and daddy think when you came back married?
Oh my gosh. We went on Saturday night. We left about, I don't know, edge of dark. And I had told Mama that I was going to go spend the night with my friend Linda. Well,
This is not Linda Gay, right?
it is.
It
It's
is Linda Gay. Okay.
Yeah. She was my partner in crime.
It still is.
Yeah. But Mama got suspicious, which my mama she was a sharp little cookie.
Mm-hmm.
So she got to looking in my closet for my suitcase where I had all of my beautiful lingerie and things that
Ooh.
I was going to use when we had our wedding in the church. Well, she got to looking and she missed. She knew that my suitcase was gone. So she called Linda Gay. And she said, Linda, do you know where Linda is? And I don't really know what Linda told her, but knowing Linda, she lied. So when we got back from Dillon, let's see, we got back on Monday because we got married, we went and ate supper, then we went to our room. The next morning we got up, we had breakfast, and we went to Carolina Beach. With it being April,
It was too cold.
it was too cold, and the wind was howling, but the sun was shining. So we had a nice time, and we came back that afternoon, I think.
Yeah.
So when we came in, Mama knew that we had gotten married. And my sister was there. Minnie, you know Minnie.
Mm-hmm.
So she says, well, are you pregnant?
Oh, no.
And I said, no, ma'am, I am not pregnant. Well, I didn't know. You slipped off and got married. I said, that's all right, but I'm not pregnant. Because Susan was born
About 2 years later.
2 years later.
Almost 2 years.
If I was pregnant, that was a long pregnancy.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But you know, people always think the worst.
Yeah.
Some people do. But anyway,
Well,
that was about the size of that.
what'd your daddy say?
I don't remember Daddy saying anything.
Well,
I doubt he even congratulated Charles on his wonderful
He was
find.
rid of her.
he was ready to get rid of her. That was not very nice. You need to keep yourself over there.
Yeah.
So, when'd you move to Irwin with Papa?
Well, right away.
Mm-hmm.
We lived with his mom and daddy next door in the gray house for a year and I think it's a year and 5 months or something like that.
And were y'all building this house while you were living
Your
with them?
papa, and there was an old man who ran a station right out the road, up the road here,
Yeah.
and he was a carpenter, plus he ran the store. And your papa had worked for him when he was a teenager driving a snow cone truck up around Coates and Benson and Irwin. So he had always promised your papa that before he retired, he would help him build his house. So Charles and Mr. Autry was his name, got started on this house, and they built it.
Nice.
And then this part of the house, this room, was a carport at that time. So we eventually closed all this in. Then we built that big garage out there, 4 cars. We added on another section to the back. Then we built that screened-in patio. So it's been a work in progress.
You are always changing something, so it's never going to end.
Well, yeah, it's getting close to being ended.
Not with what you were showing me a while ago.
That's just minor though. That's nothing like building on a room.
Mm.
When we built on that dining room and that big bathroom and those 2 big walk-in closets back there,
Mm-hmm.
now that was a project, because we did that. I think we did it in the first of the year when the weather was really bad.
When? Around what time?
What year?
Yeah.
Well, when did your mama die?
1989.
What month?
So we started it in maybe the first of the year, 1989. We finished it sometime after August. And the way I know that is because during the time that we were doing all of that, my mama had a stroke and she passed away. So she never got to see it, and she would have loved it.
Did she like doing stuff around the house as much as you do?
Well, she did, but see, like I told you, Mom and Daddy had 7 children,
Yeah.
and we were raised on a farm.
So she didn't have much time
she
to
didn't
worry
have-
about her house
Well,
and like do all the kind of stuff that you do. like
plus she
decorating
didn't
and all.
have the money.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money to raise children, as your Mom and Daddy have since found out. It takes a lot of money. So all of their children were high school graduates, and they always told us, we will make sure you get a high school certificate, which was so important back then. So I would equate it to what a college degree is at this point.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have a high school education, you didn't have anything. You didn't have a chance. And now, if you don't have a college degree, you don't have a chance.
Yeah.
So that's how times have changed. But they always told us that they would make sure that we got a high school diploma, but that they could not provide a college education.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated second in my class. I made really good grades because I was really smart. But nobody, not one single person ever said to me, Linda, you ought to go on to college. Nobody ever said to me, because we didn't even have guidance counselors back then, but we did have teachers and a principal, and nobody ever said, there are ways and means that you can get a college education.
Do you think it was just due to a lack of funding and resources? Do you think it had anything to do with being a female? Like, do you think it was just kind of a culmination of a bunch of things?
I think it was the point in time in history.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people in comparison to this day and age went off to college. Most people, you got out of school
And you went to work.
You went to work because you needed money.
Yeah.
And you know how I got hired
How?
to my first job?
How?
It was the summer after I graduated. I was out. I think we were in the cotton field chopping cotton. But this man came up to the edge of the field, and Daddy went to him. He introduced himself. His name was Alan Johnson. But he said that he needed a new secretary / bookkeeper. And he had found out, because he went to the principal at school, that I was a perfect candidate. And he had checked with other people in the neighborhood, store owners, and people who were on top of things. And they had recommended me. So he offered me a job. And Daddy almost didn't let me go to work because he needed me to be on the farm.
Yeah.
So that was what times were like back then.
Mm-hmm.
I've wished all my life. I wish I could have had a college education, because I worked in a law office for over 20 years. And I used to sit there and think, when I was working my tail off, that I could have been the attorney if I could have gotten an education. So instead, I worked as his paralegal, even though I didn't even have a degree for that, but that's what he considered me to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been so nice if I could have had an education. So therefore, one of the most important things for you and young folks to remember, get that education.
Yeah.
Don't let it slip past.
Nope. Well, while we're on the topic of working, what other kinds of jobs have you had over the years?
Okay. The first job I had was the job I told you about as secretary bookkeeper for a fertilizer and oil company in Benson. And this man owned a transit company, did trucking. So I did the books and the secretarial work for both companies. When Susan was born, I had to stop work because she was born with a birth defect. Her adrenal glands did not function, and she nearly died.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to stop work when we finally got her out of the hospital and start giving her medication at the same time several times during the day. And I had to give her prednisone by injection at the same time every day. So after that, I didn't work until Dana was ready to go to kindergarten.
So, let's see. What year would that have been?
Let's see. Susan would have been born in 67. Sheila was born in 70, and Dana was born in 72.
So it would have been like about 10 years,
Well,
right? If you're not working till Aunt Dana went to school,
67.
to about 77.
Actually, I was working.
Okay.
There's never been a point in my life when I wasn't working. I ran a florist. We had a building out back. It used to be, when Charles was young, his daddy had chicken houses, and he had delivery routes for eggs. They collected the eggs, washed them up, and sold them by the dozen. So your papa had an egg route that he did every week. Well, that they had since stopped the chicken business, so we put a florist in that building, and I ran that florist until Dana was about ready to go to kindergarten. That would have been, she was born in 72, about 77.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
So while you were staying at home taking care of Aunt Susan and Aunt Mama and Aunt Dana, you were also running the florist in the backyard.
yes ma'am,
Okay.
and doing all those weddings and all that funeral work. And that was also at a point in time that's different from now. Back in those days, people, if you didn't wear an Easter corsage, you weren't much.
Mm.
Everybody showed up at church on Sunday morning, Easter Sunday, with their big orchids up there. And the bigger the orchid, the more important you were. So during that time, I was so busy because I had all three of these girls and I was running that florist. And see, I did the biggest part of, talking to people when they came about their weddings. And we did a lot of weddings. Getting stuff ready and prepared and organized and that sort of thing. Because your Grandma Stafford,
Mm-hmm.
and your Aunt Ruby, they helped in that business.
Yeah.
And of course your Papa and his daddy also would stand there and wrap the greenery and do what they could. But, yeah, I was busy.
Mm-hmm.
Busy.
Well, what else did you do after you quit working in the florist?
After I quit running the florist, I started as a tutor at the school, a paid tutor. I first started at Irwin at the high school, and then I went to Gentry to the primary.
Yeah, primary school.
Yeah, primary school as a tutor. After that, I went to work at UCB. No, excuse me, I'm wrong. I went to work at CCB, the bank in Irwin.
Mm-hmm.
I worked there. Then later, I went to UCB, which is now BB&T, and that was in Dunn. And at some point in time, I've forgotten all those dates, but one of the girls that I worked with, we decided to put in a craft shop. That craft shop was next door to the bakery. You know where the bakery
Yeah.
is? It was next door to that.
I didn't know it was. I knew it was down in downtown Dunn, but I didn't know it was right there.
Yeah,
Oh, cool. So
Yeah.
now, like, kind of in between the bakery and the movie theater.
right,
Okay.
right. Great location. We had a really good business. But as so many things work out, the other girl wanted to stand around and watch me work. And me being somewhat of a workaholic,
You just let her.
it went on for a pretty good while, but then I got tired of that.
Yeah.
So, let's see. After that, I went to work as secretary for the president of Morganite,
Mm-hmm.
which was a big corporation there in Dunn.
Yeah.
And I stayed there until things went on a downward turn, and my boss, his name was Mr. What was his name? Philscove. No, whatever his name was. But he was fired by the board of directors. They let him go. And me being so dumb, and I had never worked in that kind of environment before, the day that they let him go, he came back after the meeting with the board of directors, and he came to my desk and he said, "Linda, I no longer have a job here. I don't know what it holds for you." I said, "What do you mean you don't have a job here?" I'd never seen anybody just totally whacked like that. So he said, "The board of directors has let me go." I said, and I'll never forget this. I looked at him, I said, "Well, you'll be here tomorrow, won't you?" And he said, "No, I'm afraid not."
Oh no.
So I stayed on for a while, and that was one of the worst times that I've ever worked, because my boss was a really great guy, and he was so good to me. And when they let him go, there was a man from Raleigh. He was chairman of the board. He came and sat in my boss's chair, and he was horrible to work for. So I finally left there. And after that, was when I went to work for Alan Litch in the law office.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where I retired. I was there over 20 years.
Yeah. I remember going and seeing you during the summer with Papa. We'd go and get cheeseburgers and then go up to your office.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I was working, y'all were eating cheeseburgers.
And cupcakes.
Yeah.
But I just licked the icing off.
I know. You always lick the icing off.
Well, I have like a fun kind of question. What was like your favorite thing your mama would cook for you when you were little?
Oh, let me see. My mom.
I'm going to pause this and we're going to start a new recording because this one's about done. So, what was your favorite thing that your mama would cook for you?
Okay. My mom was a fantastic cook. She had had so much experience because she was like 13 when her mama died. And when she went to live with her older sister who was married, she had to do a lot of the cooking. Then Mama got married. She had 7 children. That requires a lot of cooking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But some of my favorite things, and it's really hard for me to say what was my favorite thing, but she would make something called an apple dumpling. You've eaten mine.
Uh-huh.
You know how good they are.
Yes.
Well, she could make one that was a killer. But it was so good, Maggie, and I loved it. And see, when I was growing up, right on up until I married Charles, I was a skinny little thing, so I could eat anything I wanted. And it never made me fat. But then
I wish.
I started having babies, and with each one, it was a problem. But now, another thing that she made that was also one of my favorite, and this was a meal that we had at supper, and it was country ham, rice, red-eyed gravy, and fried apples and homemade biscuits with coffee.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
That is so good. Isn't it good?
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Those fried apples that she would make, they were to die for. Now, another thing that she made that was also just so awesome, on Sunday, we usually would have company. And she would go out, she'd kill the chicken. I can see her to this day out there wringing that chicken's neck. Have you ever seen anybody do that?
No, thank goodness.
Well, what they do is they chase that chicken down.
I don't need to hear all this.
Yes, you do. You need to know how hard it was. She would get that chicken. When she finally got her hands on that chicken, she'd take it by the head, right down beneath the head, and she'd swing it around and break its neck.
Oh my goodness.
And then she'd have to take that chicken after you broke its neck. You'd put it on the ground and it just flop around for a while.
Oh my.
So when she got done with all of that, she'd have to pull all the feathers out, clean that chicken, and it was not like the chicken you buy in the store.
Not Costco chicken.
No, it would be like pin feathers in it.
Yeah.
It was hard to do that. So she would take that chicken, and she might even have to do two, depending on how many people were going to be there. But she'd take that chicken, she'd put it in the pot and boil it, and she'd make chicken pastry out of that one. She would make fried chicken out of the other one. She would take that chicken that was in the boiling pot, and she would make chicken salad.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like cornbread, pastry, chicken salad,
Sounds like a usual Sunday here.
fried chicken. It was so good. Now, that was another one of my favorite meals, and maybe that's why I like to cook it like that.
Probably so, because we usually have pastry, chicken salad, fried chicken, garden peas.
Yeah, she would do that. But see, her garden peas, she didn't go to the store and buy them.
They came out of the garden.
They grew them in their garden, and she'd have to go out there and pick those
And
things,
shell them.
shell them, and then cook them.
Yeah.
So very little of what we got came from the store. I'll tell you this. One time when I was like maybe 10 or 12 years old, Daddy had gone to the grocery store for her. And me being Miss Me, I wanted some napkins.
Some napkins.
Napkins. We needed napkins. My daddy looked at me because he didn't have any money. I know he didn't have a lot of money. He probably had enough just to get what he was going there for. He looked at me and he took those napkins. He said, "Young lady, you put these back. I want you to know you were not raised on napkins."
Oh my goodness.
I'll never forget that. He said, "You were not raised on napkins." So I had to put my napkins back.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, what about that ring you told me about that time that you lost down the
yeah.
sink?
Yeah, I've always loved jewelry.
Oh, I know that.
I love jewelry and I love pretty clothes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had gone uptown with Daddy again.
He just
I-
didn't need to take you anywhere.
I just tell you, I think at one time I might have been his favorite because I don't remember any of the others going. But anyway, there was a Rose's Five and Dime right on Main Street in Dunn. And we went in that store, and they had like a little jewelry counter. And they had these rings that looked real to me at my age. That they were just so pretty to me. You know that really pretty diamond ring I've got with all of the rows of diamonds around it? Okay. It was similar to that. So he bought me, probably paid 10 cents for it, but he bought me one of those rings. Well, I wouldn't take it off, and it was probably too big for me. I don't know, but I was washing dishes, and it went down the drain.
Oh, no.
I was so heartbroken. I was so sick. I ran out. See, there was a drain pipe that ran from the sink down under the back porch, out through the backyard, and to the edge of the field. That's where the water went. So I went out there with Mama's tea strainer.
Oh, goodness.
She never knew that. But I strained every bit of the water that came through there. I never found my ring.
Oh, no.
I was so heartbroken because it was so pretty. And I still see those rings in the stores. They're, of course, real diamonds now. They're so beautiful because it reminds me of being a child.
Oh. Well, when I make a lot of money, I'll buy you one.
Okay. You go ahead and go to law school.
It's going to be a little while.
Well, I can wait.
Okay. Big promise.
I've waited all these years. I can wait.
So, you got any other stories or anything you want to share?
Oh, I will tell you this. You might find this interesting. When I was growing up, we did not have indoor plumbing. We had a hand pump on the back porch, and you would pump up enough water to do whatever you wanted to do. Taking a bath was a real chore because you had to take water in a wash basin to the bedroom, and in the wintertime, in my bedroom, we had an old pot-bellied stove. Do you know pot-bellied heater?
Yeah.
And you'd set that basin of water up there and you'd get it warm. And you just take what you now call a bird bath, because we didn't have indoor plumbing. At some point in time, Daddy bought a sink for the kitchen. And I don't even remember there being hot water, but it was running water at a sink in the kitchen, which we had gone uptown. So, when Daddy built the house on Highway 55, you remember that highway? Okay.
Yeah.
That was the year that I was a senior. In the first part of the year of that last year, he built that house and it had plumbing. Thank God. That was just the most wonderful thing to have indoor plumbing. So, backing up to the point in time when I was growing up, my brother and I decided we could build a shower in Mama's old wash house out there. We took one corner of it, and it was the two of us working together. We poured a concrete foundation like in the corner, and it was about maybe 3 by 4 or 3 by 3, just big enough you know, to get in there and take a shower. So we hung some kind of tarp or something around the sides of it so you'd have privacy.
Yeah.
Well, we got a big drum, one of Daddy's big old drums, and we put it up on top of that building. There was a pipe that he ran through the side of the building from that drum. And during the day, we kept it full of water. The sun would warm it.
Yeah.
So you could take a warm shower.
Oh, cool.
And now I remember what it was that we put around the side of it so we'd have privacy.
Yeah.
Burlap bags.
Oh, wow.
Daddy, back then, fertilizer and seeds and all that stuff came in burlap bags.
Yeah.
And Daddy stored them in a building that was like, I don't know, maybe 500 feet from the house. So my brother, being the oldest one, and he was the boss, he sent me to get those burlap bags out of that building. I was scared in that building because it was full of just burlap bags and stuff that Daddy would put in there. Anyway, I got me 3 or 4 bags and I hung them on my shoulder, happy as I could be because we were going to have a shower. Well, I was walking down the road to get back to the house. All of a sudden, I looked on my shoulder and there was something moving, and I thought it was a snake because it was in those bags, and well, it was not a snake. It was a lizard. You know those brown lizards, those green lizards?
Yeah.
It was brown.
Oh.
And it's the salamander, I think is what they're called. But I screamed so loud and I jumped so high, sacks went everywhere, and so did my lizard. Well, my brother, who had been in that building that was way far from where I was, heard me screaming, and he came running as hard as he could run to find out what was wrong. I guess he thought somebody had attacked me. But we gathered my sacks up, took them up there to where we had built our ingenious shower, and we hung them up. And I don't know which one of us took first shower, but I bet it was him because he was older and he was bossy.
Which brother was it?
Cheryl.
Cheryl, okay.
Yeah. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
How long would that shower last? I'm just curious.
Well, it was like a 50-gallon, Charles, those drums that are about this high, aren't they 50-gallon?
Yeah.
50-gallon drum.
Wow.
So depending on how much water you used in your shower as to how long the water would last.
You had to take a cat bath.
But see, what you do, by that time, I don't know if I can't remember if we actually had running water and a hose pipe. I can't remember by that time. Or if we had to fill it up with a bucket. But you had to climb up there and fill up that big drum so that sun that God sent that day would warm it up.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. I think that was one of the memories I always thought about, that he wasn't very old, and I probably was 12, 13, I don't even know. But Charles, turn those fans off. I'm getting a stuffy nose.
Well, that's all my questions.
That's all.
Thank you so much.
Well, you're most welcome, Miss Prince.